Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Staying sober in a world full of temptations can be very difficult, especially around the holidays. So this week, we are surviving addiction. According to the 2023 U.S. National Survey on Drug Use and Health, reported 48.5 million people, that is 16.7% of Americans 12 years old and older, battled a substance use disorder in the last year. This is such an important topic. This is True Crime Connections. I am Tiffany, your host, and joining me this week from the Encino Recovery and Detox Center is Andrew Levander, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you are out of California and Nevada. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for asking.
There are so many things I love about your program. One of them that stand out to me is you don't just treat the person, you treat their family. And I think that is so important, especially because how many families actually enable their loved ones without even realizing it?
Yeah, thank you for that. And it is a family disease, whether it's enabling, as you pointed out, which would be an example of like this family system is enmeshed. They're intertwined with each other. And the opposite of that would be a disengaged family. Each of them have their pluses and negatives, but it definitely impacts everybody. And I actually look at it in terms of if you love somebody who struggles with a substance use disorder, at some point, that person's going to feel like an emotional hostage to their loved one who is struggling with the addiction. It's like a damned if you do and damned if you don't. You don't want to give money because you lost trust in your loved one 2.5 years ago. It's a tornado through a family, is how people have described it. I mean, even in my life, I'd like to think that it was a controlled tornado, but I think there's a bit of minimization and denial that I just sprinkled on top of my own. Uh, it's a horribly painful experience for everybody involved.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's so important that you do detox under supervision. 3 years ago, I actually lost my stepfather to alcohol. He thought he
Oh,
could do it
sorry.
on his own, and he did not succeed with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. And I can't tell you how many people think the very same thing. Like it's just drinking, I'll just stop. For us alcoholics, it's not generally that easy. We all wanted to stop long before we eventually did. But yes, it's one of two primary drugs of abuse that somebody could die during the withdrawal process. The first being alcohol, and the other one is benzodiazepines, which are the sedative, hypnotic, anxiolytic class of med, Ativan and Valium and Klonopin, that class of medication. Both of those you can die.
I would think heroin would be on that list, no?
No, when it comes to opiate addiction, the person feels like they're going to die. At times they wish they would die, but there's generally not a significant risk of death from the withdrawal itself, like there is with alcohol and benzodiazepines.
Very
It's just
interesting.
incredibly physically and emotionally painful.
I could see how that could be. Absolutely. Because your body is craving it and you're so sick without it.
And you have the answer. You have the antidote. It's a battle inside that a person will fight with themselves and other people. The answer is right over there. Or if you just give me my phone, I can call a person that I know is holding, that I can just go get it. I can solve my own problem. And I'm making this number up, but 9 out of 10 times, the desire to solve one's own problem by using is going to win, because it's
Yeah.
not a matter of willpower, or it's not about that. This is a brain issue. Neurochemically, our brain is in pain, and it knows what it wants.
The way of survival for them.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very, as we're talking about it, I've been in the field for 25 years, and uh, I am in recovery both for opiates and alcohol. And I forget sometimes what it was really like, because it's been a long time since I've experienced that type of pain. It's what keeps me sober. That, and like the love for my wife and daughters and career, but what keeps me sober is I don't ever want to experience that pain again. There's a saying, for those who understand, an explanation isn't necessary. And for those who don't understand, an explanation isn't possible.
Mm.
And I really find that to be profoundly true with addiction, that it is not something that can be explained to somebody who hasn't gone through it.
100%. You don't understand the cravings, the tics, the triggers, all of it.
Yeah, the shame, the decades of secrets, it's a mess. It's a chaotic way of living.
Yes, absolutely. I
And
think
a
it's
lot better on this side. It's a it's a lot better and easier. I mean, again, for 25 years, I hear all the time, even here at my treatment center in Los Angeles, I hear so often, I can't believe that I didn't try this sooner, because it's not as difficult for most people as they built it up to be. I mean,
mm,
it's hard, but it's it's really doable.
that is great to know that it's, you build up this fear and once you actually get the proper help, it's not that bad. I think that could save so many people.
Yeah, nowadays with the advances in, it's called MAT, medication assisted treatment. There's so many great medications that don't have to be used as a replacement. Like, we're going to replace fentanyl with Suboxone. So people used to say, so I just get addicted to the Suboxone instead of and it just, that's a story that we make up. It doesn't have to be that way.
I always
It's a
wondered
stepping
that.
stone. Yeah, it can be used either, it's called maintenance, which is you transition from the illicit substance like fentanyl or opiates to a doctor prescribed medication, Suboxone, Subutex. And the plan is just to stay on it. And it's an incredible medication in that, and this is not an exaggeration, you can be addicted to heroin on Friday morning and go through the induction process to transition from heroin to Suboxone under a doctor's care. And you can go to the store in the afternoon. Like, there isn't that downtime I'm kind of making light of it, which isn't my intention, but you don't have to stop your life to get well. I guess is the point that if there is any point, you don't have to stop your life. We've come a long way with medication.
I think that's a very important point to make because I always wondered that myself. Like, okay, so you're stuck on these pills, but now they're going to give you Suboxone, but now you can get stuck on that. Like I've heard you have to get weaned off of that. So it's like you're just replacing one vice with another.
Yes, but there are some significant differences in being this. I mean, the simple difference is doesn't have to be a secret anymore. You stop the shame, you stop the hiding, you stop shuffling money from one account to another account so that somebody doesn't see a charge from the ATM, or all of that ends. If you have a headache, you take an Advil. And if you want to be well and sober, take your morning dose of Suboxone or whatever you kind of work out with the doctor. And the other way to do it is not as a replacement, but as a part of a harm reduction model, which is from illicit substance to doctor prescribed, like Suboxone, for an identified period of time. Like, a month, for 2 months, we're going to go from 8 milligrams down to 6, down to 4, down to 2, down to 1, and titrate it out of one system. And for millions of people, millions, that works.
Better than the alternative.
It is certainly better than the alternative. It is a lonely, isolating, self-reinforcing, compulsive, life-ending problem to have, addiction. It's what I was starting to say before, that it's been so long, but in having conversations like this, which I'm grateful for, it reminds me, and should remind all of us in recovery, not to forget what it was like, and not to get overconfident and think that we can do it. At least that helps me.
I love how you say that relapses are not failures.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will say lots of us in recovery hear things like relapse is a part of recovery. Well, that's not true for everybody. The day that I stopped drinking, I have not relapsed since that day. I don't think it's a matter of luck. I don't think it's a matter of the way that I put it, at least to myself, because it's been helpful, is drinking is not something I do anymore. I guess maybe a strange way of speaking, but if somebody were to say, "Do you want to drink?" there isn't anything for me to think about because I don't drink anymore. So there's not the option for myself, which is really, it makes things easier not to have an option in certain things.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't have to think about anything. It's not what I do. So I did the same thing when it came to when I quit smoking. You plan for it. I'm a big believer that for some of us, the biggest thing that's wrong with us is the way that we think about us and the way that we talk to ourselves, and that chatter in our heads. We all would probably agree regarding like a bad neighborhood. Well, we'll give it a test here. Would you agree that for any bad neighborhood, you probably shouldn't go to a bad neighborhood?
They'll tell you shouldn't go.
But if you had to go, would you agree it would be best not to go alone?
Yes.
That's how I think of when we're having conversations. When I have a conversation with myself, my brain can be a bad neighborhood. And I have 55 years of examples of why it's a bad neighborhood when I go alone. I kind of have historically a really great aptitude for thinking myself into a corner. I have literally on my desk right now, I have this wood sign that says, "Hold on while I overthink this." Um, Times like this, I laugh about it. There are times where um, it, it's just too much mental processing. So,
I think everyone can identify with that because that's the voice that just doesn't shut up. It does not go away. And you've got to retrain how it speaks. And it's difficult, but it can be done.
yeah, most of us tend to think that if like, well, I saw it on the internet, it must be true. Well, I thought about it this morning, it must be true. And I was so, it was a life changing experience when I realized after it had been pointed out 100 times to me that just because I think it doesn't mean that it's true.
I
That
love that.
we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, researchers have, I've heard. If all of it was true, or if we had to pay attention, I don't really know how to say this. There's way too much information that 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 goes on in our heads on any given day, and we all have private thoughts that it's terrifying to think, "Oh my god, what if that happened? Or what if that's true?" Can't they say we can't help what we think, but we do have a say on the actions that we take,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
thankfully. Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That ran the show a lot of time. We'd be in a lot more trouble than we are now.
Yeah. It's good to have like a personal assistant, whether that's a best friend or a partner or whoever. I have 2 people in my life, and I'm grateful for, that can tell me the truth, and 9 out of 10 times, I will not get defensive, and I can hear it because I trust that it is coming from a loving place. And I've got 2. Again, I feel fortunate.
It's very important. You have to have somebody in your corner. You do.
Yes, but not that just is gonna sugarcoat things and be a yes person. At least for me, I need to be told when I'm full of shit because 'cause I'm not always aware.
Right. That part.
That's the part that I'm highlighting. Yeah, it's just too much potential for consequences. So,
I think it's
on our
safe to
website, it
say oh,
says
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say on our website, there's a very simple phrase that says, "Relationships are the antidote," period. And then it says, "To everything." And there isn't anything I believe more than that. And by belief, I mean nobody could change my mind on it. I feel really rigid about relationships are the antidote to all things. Might not be the current relationships in our life. We might need to get out of some toxic connections we have and make some new ones. But we're not designed to do this alone, go through life alone.
Right. Absolutely. That kinda leads me to I do honestly believe that trauma, especially childhood trauma and addiction, pretty much kinda go hand in hand.
I couldn't agree more. They're like cousins. They're so closely related.
Yes. Now, I know, like, you've been on Oprah, Dr. Phil, all that, helping people. trying to say, where did I want to go with that? I mean, you see all different walks of life. You see every different angle of why people need the things that they need. Do you like find certain people kind of give more resistance? Like maybe people who are like celebrities, athletes, politicians, like do they come into the facility and kind of like, do you feel like you get more resistance from them?
No, that's a very interesting question because I actually find the opposite when you put everything aside. All of our stories are different, but the one thing that connects all of us, especially anybody who's survived a trauma, is we all are in this club that we didn't want to belong to. We all know what pain feels like, the kind of pain that you can't talk about, you don't want to talk about, it's scary to talk about. You don't know if you're using the right words. When you do talk about it, that's what's universal, is the pain. So, to your point, whether somebody is famous or not famous, lives in a mansion or is homeless, there is a common experience of the emotional pain that comes along with trauma. The more complex the trauma, the deeper and more entrenched the pain tends to be. But maybe you've experienced this. You ever meet somebody and you just get a sneaky suspicion that they've got a story that might not be that different from yours? Or like I get this sense sometimes like, man, if I didn't know any better, I would swear that person has gone through some heavy shit in their life. I think we tend to be sensitive to it in other people. And I guess professionally, that's helped me as a clinician. Back to the statement about for those who understand, an explanation isn't necessary. That that leads to profoundly significant therapeutic connections when the person doesn't have the burden of worrying if the person they are contemplating talking to, if that person's going to understand. If you move that out of the way, the relief that comes from speaking, just learning to talk again and not having to be so afraid. It's ex- it, it's why I love being a therapist. It's it's everything that I wanted to do, um, was to be available to somebody else who was in pain, and especially as a man, because that really doesn't get talked about a lot. Are the male survivors of childhood sexual abuse in particular? We do not get a lot of airtime, and yet the statistic is 1 in 6 boys before the age of 18, whereas the statistic for girls is 1 in 4, which is staggering, and it's a shameful statistic in this country. And
Very much so.
it is far too common, and we don't talk about it. And um, I do. Uh, uh, why this is so, I feel important to talk about. One, because people are not, and two, um, we see a lot of people at our treatment center that have been to treatment before, and a lot of them have the experience when they leave. We will get in like client satisfaction survey. They'll say things like, um, "I've been to treatment 4 times, and this is the first time I have felt comfortable enough to talk about what happened to me," or "so grateful that there was a group just for what I struggle with. And I've been to therapy for, you know, 10 times or whatever the number is. It's just not being talked about." So I actually make the assumption that for the men that come here, I assume that they are trauma survivors, as opposed to wondering if they experienced a trauma, whether it's I mean, all of us have experienced have had trauma in our life. But the one that we're talking about is so specific and kind of over there for a lot of people. But we don't. We bring it out. On Monday, today's Friday. On Monday, we had an intake, and I just got a sense that the type of pain that this man who just got here was in, it was just crushing. And one of the first things you said is you like that we treat the person or the family. More than that is we don't treat addiction. We treat people who have a problem with addiction, as well as a problem with other things as well. And so we, for example, don't sit around and talk a lot about drug use. It's not what's wrong. It's what got him in the door. And it's been oftentimes a needed detour around, well, I just call it the big ugly in a person's life. So we make sure to create some space for the things to be talked about that have never been talked about, if for no other reason than to prove to a grown man that nothing bad happens if you talk about it.
I think that's so important. I talk about it on my show. I've actually had a lot of survivors, male and female, come on and tell their story. So other people who are going through this know that you're not alone. Other people are going through it, and you can get better. But I think that's 110%. The addiction happens because you're trying to cover up something else. That's where the addiction came from, because something happened and that was just your Band-Aid to try to get through it. So I love that you guys actually focus on the problem, because some people, like some treatment centers, they just want to focus on the addiction, but you're not fixing what caused the addiction to take place.
Yeah. And look, we have to be really careful to not open up it's a giant can of worms, and we only have them for 25 to 30 days. And so it is a complicated decision to make, that we make in kind of partnership with our clients, like almost like, are you sure you want to go here? And then to lay out what is a reasonable expectation. So if you open up something for the first time that you've never talked about, and you're 50 years old and you've been carrying this around for 40 years, there's no two ways around it that it is painful and uncomfortable. So let's align expectations, work really hard on aftercare plans so that you're not alone, more vulnerable, without your coping mechanism anymore because you want to be sober, and a new type of vulnerable. And so I certainly agree. On the one hand, it's great that we have special programming and groups that I run that are called homogeneous, which just all men, or homogeneous groups that are all women, just for the men. And we do the same thing for women if when needed as well. It just needs to be a really thoughtful and planned out. And I think that's why a lot of treatment centers, to their credit, our primary responsibility is to medically attend to people's medical detox needs in from 1 week to a month, to free them up to go do the deeper work when they finish this part of treatment. That is completely reasonable and thoughtful as well. What I'm finding is that when a man here feels like it's time to talk about it, and that I'm not going to judge him and the other men in the group aren't either, they've been waiting for a really long time to dump this. And I don't want to miss an opportunity either. So maybe, and I'm just as a new thought, we, uh, I try not to be afraid of it, of what might happen, because I can't control what might happen, but I can let them know that, I mean, we're literally open 24 hours a day. We're staffed 24 hours a day. It won't be left alone. There's somebody to talk to all the time. So I wish that that I had something like this available when I was going through my stuff.
Sounds like a very well-rounded program.
Yeah, for 25 years, the short story is I didn't know that I didn't think I was going to survive my childhood, and that's not like hyperbole or exaggeration. And I had lots of struggles. And when I was 14, my mother said one night, "Let's go shopping after dinner." Okay. And we ended up in a therapist parking lot. And it was a kind of an intervention because at 14, I was just a mess and incapable of keeping all the plates spinning anymore. And so I saw this therapist and I remember thinking, his name was Rick Tivers, and it changed my life, the North Shore of Chicago. I remember thinking, there's got to be a catch here because it seems like all this guy wants to do is be helpful. Like that's a job and you get paid for trying to help people who are depressed or whatever the case may be. And I thought that was remarkable that you could get paid for being sensitive, which had always been kind of used as name calling in regards to me, like, Andy, you're so sensitive, or you're too sensitive. And it looked like there maybe was some hope that my sensitivity could lead to something better and something helpful, not just for myself, but for other people as well. And I I thought, if I do get out of childhood, I'm going to look into this. And then that happened, and I went to grad school and did what everybody else does who wants to become a therapist. And I remember thinking one day I'm going to have a place and I'm going to call it the Healing House of Los Angeles. And about 15 years ago, I did open the Healing House of Los Angeles, and it was a, a very private, small outpatient treatment center for um, adolescent and adults who struggle with self injury, who like cut, burn, scratch, that kind. Also, incredibly connected to childhood trauma, and those services weren't available. And then I thought about, uh, well, that's a very specific population of people. Could some of the thinking that went into coming up with the healing house, could that be applied to other groups of people as well? And then my own addiction and recovery. And so for 25 years, I've been thinking about, if I had a place, everybody would have their own room. If I had a place, there would be plenty of room outside to get away, to be, if you need quiet, but not too far away from people, if you shouldn't be alone or don't want to be alone. And so we put together the Encino Detox in large part around the vision that's been swimming around in my head for a long time. And the tagline, it's not, we don't really have one, but this is all I've ever wanted to do as a therapist, was to help reintroduce people to themselves in a more loving way. That was the goal. And all of our therapies, and whether they're evidence-based or evidence-informed, they're all designed around that one thought. Will this experience potentially help reintroduce this person to themselves in a more loving way. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that all of us here do, including the clients who do such hard work on themselves. But that to me, that's the trick. That's that's what it takes. Is we have to figure out how to not continue to beat the shit out of ourselves for things that weren't kind of our fault to begin with, but that most of us take responsibility for.
Oh, God, that just touched me. I commend you so much. I think what you're doing is amazing. The fact that you had these visions so long ago and then you were able to bring them into life and with such passion and caring for other people, literally, you are amazing.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you. At times like this, I definitely do feel that.
Good. You deserve it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a lot of work.
Nothing good comes easy. I'm learning that.
That certainly seems to be true.
Yes. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I guess just because it's come up kind of naturally and it's such an easy, important point that you pointed out first, the reminder to people that we get better and we do. I have been I have been writing a book. I've been writing a few of them in my head for a really long time. I feel I have a lot to say, but now that I'm, I guess, at 55, which I'm I'm asking somebody to redo the math because I don't think the math is right. I can't possibly be 55. One of the books that I've started and is now um, they're actually typed words, not just in my head. It's called right now. It's called Foraging: The Longing of Lonely Children, and it is a look at, I guess, a word of the day for me, that a juxtaposition. It's the reuse of the word foraging, which is often or almost, I guess, always thought of as the searching for food and kind of sustenance. In this case, the foraging that lonely children um, are on the hunt for is much different than how we normally look at it. I foraged for pills and um, distractions and isolation. I looked for things that were the opposite of what I found I really needed to be okay in the world, which are other people, connection, not isolation and despair, not pills, not booze. And we, no, more than ever, we are drowning, I think, in information and technology, literally drowning in it. We have computers in our pockets, and yet, despite drowning in information and technology, I think we're starving for connections. And the evidence of that seems to be all of these new apps that pop up all the time that are specifically designed to connect people. Sometimes healthy, sometimes not healthy, but we definitely are a society of people searching for connection. And there's something to it. I haven't figured it out yet, but we haven't figured it out yet. I don't think it's in the palm of our hand in our phones. I Something that shocks me that I try my best to understand. A deal breaker to staying in treatment for so many of our clients is whether or not they can have their phone while they're here for anywhere from a week to 4 weeks. And the amount of people that say, I'm not staying if you don't give me my phone is staggering
Wow.
to the point where we have meetings after meetings after meetings on like what do we have to do differently instead of trying to get other people to bend and fold around our idea of a digital detox as being both beneficial in a person's life and safe for this recovery community. Like, what part of the country are you in?
I'm in Florida.
So I don't know if you have this in Florida, but in California, we have weed maps and we have drug delivery services, but they're not called drugs anymore because it's legal. So I can go on my phone to weedmaps.com and I can order marijuana delivered to my house. And it's all perfectly legal because marijuana is legal in California. And when we didn't have a phone rule, that was happening.
Mm.
Our detox delivery drivers were showing up with deliveries of large quantities of different types of marijuana. And it was shocking and scary. And I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. And it reminded me that I'm 55 and I guess a little out of touch. But in order to create a safe environment, we had to act. We had to do something. And so it's just the energy put into combating. Like, I don't want to argue with somebody. If it's your time to be well, that's okay. God bless. Don't die. Give us a call if you change your mind. I don't want to power struggle with people. But I also don't want to argue with people about a phone
That's another
and whether or not,
addiction. Your
well,
phone is another addiction. Absolutely.
it would certainly seem that way with people choosing um, to continue to struggle with their addiction because they can't keep their phone on them. I try not to be judgmental about it, but the truth is I feel judgmental about it. But again, where I've kind of landed with it is it might not be that person's time to be well. I
They
think
have
that
to want it.
you can get sober and have your cell phone, but we're a licensed and accredited 12-bed kind of luxury, safe community. And I'm responsible to keep it a safe community. And one of the ways that, at least so far, that we're trying to do that is to limit cell phone access. Everybody can use their phone, like with the case manager or their therapist, or but just free access. It's too triggering for people. And
Oh, I can
everybody's an
see that.
adult here. I don't want to take up people's time arguing about put your phone away. You're in therapy, for God's sake. Uh, so um, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking about so much that it's a giant problem. I think because I'm so surprised by it still. Like, really, we're gonna have to talk about your phone again. If there isn't anything else to talk about, we should probably talk about that in therapy on Tuesday. It's just a tremendous opportunity that we have, and I think that's what I feel passionate about. Is I don't want to waste the opportunity because us drug addicts are impulsive people. And so if somebody from 10 minutes is like, I am ready to go to treatment, we gotta be ready because it's gonna change. And I don't want to miss the window. But this conversation has reminded me of something that I tend to do, and that is I can't work harder than the client. And sometimes I do. Because I want them to see the miracle of this whole thing is attainable and it's not as hard as we make it up as we think it's going to be. And I wish that I could package that and just give it to people. I haven't found the way to do that yet.
I could see how that would be a problem for sure, because it's those outside influences that are influencing them to do the bad things or triggering them to say, "Oh god, I need to have a drink," or this or that, and so there needs to be no interruptions, no interference. So, sometimes I do believe that phone usage is an addiction in itself, but it's also a cop out. "Oh, you won't let me do this, this, or this? Well, then I'm not going." Makes it easier for them to say, "Okay, then I'm not gonna do it."
Yes, if somebody I find if somebody is foraging for a reason to not take really good care of themselves, it's easy. They'll find something, whether it's the cell phone or the food that our chef makes, or our sheets are too scratchy, um, or they don't like 12 steps, or people don't have to work that hard. They don't have to stay. They're not required to be here. It's voluntary. It's like in 12-step meetings, there's just, if you want what we've got, and that's all. On some level, it's that simple. If you want what a lot of us who work here, if you want some of what we've got, let us help you with your thinking for a few weeks. Your best thinking got you here. So clearly, you could benefit from some help with your thinking.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, we're pretty easy to find online. The Encino Detox Center.com. We have an 800 number is 833-433-2435, which translates to 4EDC help. I don't know. I got excited that day when I got that phone number. And, again, we answer our phones 24 hours a day. And people don't have to suffer in silence anymore if they don't want to. And even if for some reason we can't help, we are really good at finding somebody who can. We have a lot of partnerships in Los Angeles area as well as around the country of places that we really like and trust, and that we feel do good work. And even if somebody just calls and they don't want to come to California, we'll help you find a place wherever they live.
That's great. I love that. I'm gonna make sure that I put the link and the phone number in the show notes, so anyone
We
who's
appreciate that.
interested, yeah, they can find you easily. Because help is out there. You just have to be willing to receive it.
Yeah, we work with most insurance companies. I don't know that we've ever not worked it out. This is a strange time of year when it comes to insurance. Everybody's deductibles are about to reset at the first of the year, but we try not to let that be a barrier for getting some help. So we will do whatever we can to help people kind of remove the barriers, so they can access treatment. People don't have to wait until New Year's resolution, which I know they're not going to follow anyways. That's the pessimist in me. So, I mean, you could change, people can, choose to change their life today. They don't have to wait until the 1st of January. But again, it's not a hard sell. We're always open. So happy to be helpful if
Absolutely.
we can.
Yes. I mean, you guys are doing such great work. It's
Thank you.
put the damn phones down and just go fix yourself. Your phone will be there when you're done, but you probably don't even want to talk to any of the people who are in it when you're done. So,
Yeah, or it's not a good idea in the first place. And, with all this talk about the phones, I've like annoyed myself with it. Sorry for your listeners. If it's like work related, or you want to, not disrupt your connection with your kids and nighttime routine, we're not rigid like that. We we'll have a conversation about it and figure it out. So we can help solve most issues.
get the throw out there. There you go.
Yeah. And thank you for the work that you're doing and bringing attention to very private yet important topics, if nothing else, highlighting that people get better. And it's not, doesn't have to be a lifelong definition for somebody. We just have to think about it differently.
Absolutely. Which is doable. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I did it. You did it. It sounds like it happens to so many goddamn people that clearly people are finding their way.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. And I
Yeah, my
appreciate you
pleasure.
being vulnerable with your own story. I mean, that's just amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.